Chapter 15. On with the Snow. The day of the show was also the last day of school. My friends were full of energy, but Mrs. Brisbane calmed them down and they finished up their schoolwork. In the afternoon, Ms. Lark came to the classroom to wish us luck. "I know you'll do a great job this evening," she said. "Remember, keep calm and stay focused. Daniel, you'll practice again after school?" He nodded. "Sophie, you know what you're doing?" she asked. Sophie nodded. I was glad she knew what she was doing, because I certainly didn't. Ms. Lark continued, "You'll meet here and get in your costumes. Then 10 minutes before you go on, I'll stop by to help you line up and walk to the gymnasium." Mrs. Brisbane thanked her, and we went on with the rest of the day. When class was almost over, Mrs. Brisbane let my friends practice the songs while sitting in their seats. It sounded so good, I was sure it was going to be a great show. Then Holly raised her hand and asked who would be taking Og and me for the holidays. My ears perked up because it was something I'd wondered for a long time. Mrs. Brisbane smiled and said, "Oh, I guess it's selfish of me, but I'm taking them both home. I want Todd and Jenny to get to know them. Besides, you'll all be busy building snowmen, because I heard on the radio that it's supposed to snow late tonight." My friends seemed pleased to hear about the snow, except for Joey. He looked at the window, and then he closed his eyes for a second. I knew he was wishing that his dad could make it home before the snow arrived. When the bell rang at the end of the day, everyone raced out of the room except for Mrs. Brisbane. "I think I'll leave you two here for now," she said. "I'll pick you up after the show." Good, I said, because I want to be here to see my friends. Mrs. Brisbane chuckled. "I guess you're as excited as the rest of the class." She was right. It was dark when everyone returned to room 26. "Aren't you excited, Og?" I squeaked. Boing, boing. He dived into the water side of his tank and splashed around. Mrs. Brisbane arrived first with her husband, Bert. He rolled his wheelchair over to our table. "So, I hear you guys are coming to visit," he said. "That's enough of a present for me." "Me too," I agreed. The girls were all dressed in white shirts and black pants, or skirts. Mrs. Brisbane helped them get their snowflakes on their backs and wrists. They were shiny and shimmering, and no two were alike. The boys wore dark shirts and pants. Mr. Brisbane helped them with their tails and ears. Once they had their bells, the room was jingling and jangling like mad. In fact, everybody was talking and laughing. Rosie showed Mr. Brisbane how to twirl like a snowflake in his wheelchair. I heard Phoebe tell Kelsey that she was so excited because her grandmother was recording the show so her parents could see it. Sophie was talking and talking, to herself this time. And Joey was practicing his whinny. Whee! "Students, why don't we start to line up now?" Mrs. Brisbane said. "Mrs. Lark will be here soon." While she helped them start a line, Daniel came over to my cage. "Okay, Humphrey, I need you to bring me good luck again." He picked up my cage and moved toward the line. "What about Og?" I squeaked. But just then, Daniel tilted the cage and I slid all the way across. "Eek!" "Aren't we taking Og?" Phoebe asked Daniel. He shrugged. "I don't know." The door opened and Mrs. Lark came in. I couldn't get a good look at her from my cage, but I heard her tell everyone how great they looked. The line started to move into the hallway. Suddenly, Mrs. Lark said, "What are you doing with that cage?" Daniel said, "I'm taking Humphrey. He's my good luck charm." Then I could see her. Mrs. Lark wasn't tall, but as I looked at her from my cage, I saw a giant face, a giant no-nonsense face. "There's no way you're taking that creature into the gym," she said. "But I need him for luck," Daniel said. "I can't play without him." "Put him back," she demanded. "But you let him come the other day," he began. Again, Against my better judgment, Mrs. Lark told him. Put him back now. Yes, Daniel, I know you'll be fine without him, Mrs. Brisbane said. Daniel carried my cage back and set it on the table by the window. I can't play it without you, he said. Yes, you can, I squeaked, even though I was disappointed I'd missed the show. Suddenly, Daniel opened the door to my cage and scooped me up. Come on, Humphrey, no one will know. And he put me in his pocket, which was down near his knee. A pocket isn't a good place to put a hamster. The bad news was that it was dark and hot in there. The good news was that I was going to the show after all. Bye, Og, I yelled, though I'm sure he couldn't hear me. Bump, 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 bump. The class headed down the hall. Once the bumping stopped, I knew we were somewhere near the gym. Hey, we can see the stage from here, I heard Daniel tell Thomas. Wow, it's all snowy, Thomas replied. I used my paws to climb up the inside of the pocket and poke my head at the top. We were standing in the hallway, but I could see the stage from an open door into the gym. The students from Mrs. Loomis's class were on stage, wearing bright sweaters, scarves, earmuffs, and singing about a winter wonderland. I recognized some of them from my class last year. Golden Miranda and Speak Up Saye, Wait for the Bell Garth, and Sit Still Seth. And they were all gathered around a great big snowman. Eek! I squeaked. He'll melt! Daniel pushed me back down into the pocket, and I couldn't see anything. I did sniff out 2 raisins stuck to the cloth. They were squishy, but still tasty. After a while, we started moving again. I could feel us moving up some steps and then onto the stage. Thump! That was Daniel sitting down on the piano bench. Now Mrs. Brisbane's class will perform for you. But first, an introduction from Sophie Kaminsky. I peeked out of the pocket again. Sophie walked to the center of the stage and faced the audience. She wasn't wearing her snowflake costume. The audience! I turned and saw them. Mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, grandmothers and grandfathers, and lots of friends. The gymnasium was packed with people. Sophie stared out at the crowd. Everyone waited for her to say something, but for the first time ever, Stop Talking Sophie didn't seem to feel like talking. I wished I could tell her to squeak up. Luckily, Mrs. Brisbane cleared her throat loudly. Sophie suddenly opened her mouth and said, Most people think that no 2 snowflakes are identical. However, scientists aren't quite sure. Just for tonight, we'll say that no 2 snowflakes are the same, because in our class, no 2 students are the same, and we're happy about that. Then she walked to the side of the stage, and Mrs. Brisbane helped her put on her snowflakes. 1, 2, 3, 4, Mrs. Lark said. The music began to play, and the girls came twirling and whirling and sparkling on stage, singing their song. No 2 snowflakes are the same. People were oohing and aahing at the lovely sight. When they finished, Miss Lark pointed to Daniel, and he began to play as the boys came on stage, prancing and shaking bells and singing with all their hearts. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a 1-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a 1-horse open sleigh. Just Joey let out a fine whee! And the audience roared with laughter. Every single time Joey whinnied, the crowd reacted happily. Then the girls whirled in again and sang their snowflake song, while the boys sang Jingle Bells. It sounded so good, I had to have a better look. So I pulled myself up, and then something terrible happened. I started falling down. I had to stop myself, so I grabbed onto Daniel's pant leg. He kept playing, but for some reason, some of the notes he hit weren't quite right. I was barely listening, though, because I started sliding down, down, down. Whew! I made it safely to the floor. I was going to try to get safely behind the piano, but as soon as I turned, Be Careful Kelsey came twirling right towards me. I darted away, just as Rolling Rosie whirled dangerously close to me. I took a sharp right, and then here came the horses, jingling, jangling, so close one of them almost pranced on my tail. "Humphrey?" I heard Harry exclaim. "Humphrey!" other friends shouted. There was a stir in the audience, but I wasn't bothered by that. I was bothered by the fact that my friends were all whirling and prancing to avoid stepping on me, which meant that they were crashing into one another. Then I heard a sound unlike anything I've ever heard before. Eek! Someone was screaming. Eek! I didn't know a human could make such a loud sound. Everybody stopped to look in the direction of the eek. It was Miss Lark. She was standing on a stool and screaming, "Get it out! Get it out!" And then the thing I always dreaded happened. Mrs. Wright blew her whistle. I was jittery enough as it was, but that shrill blast almost made me jump out of my fur coat. "Everybody stop where you are," she shouted. I stopped. The music stopped. The whirling and twirling and prancing stopped. Even Miss Lark stopped screaming. Mrs. Brisbane ran onto the stage, gently picked me up, and held me in the palm of her hand. I was trembling from all the excitement and the whistle, but she stroked my back with her finger, and that calmed me down. She stepped to the front of the stage and spoke to the audience.